Her name is Jenifer. She was the victim of the guy that I shot the other day. She has nowhere to go.
And you brought her here? You brought her into our house?
Just wanted to give her a place to spend the night. That's all. She was in an insane asylum. Jesus. Ruby, look at her. She can't even speak. I just wanted to help her, that's all. She's got nobody to give a damn about her.
What's wrong with her? I mean, was she born that way?
I don't know.
She scared the hell out of me, Frank.
She's fucking awesome. And she's got a great rack. You know, for a Morlock.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films and TV shows.
Hold on.
Based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We are your hosts, Jordan and Kumar. That's me.
And me.
And this week, we are talking about Jenifer, episode 4 of season 1 of the horror anthology series Masters of Horror.
That's right.
Which was on Showtime.
Yes. And you'll
in
have
the
noticed,
early 2000s.
And you'll have noticed, as Kumar stumbled over the introduction there, that this was not a feature film.
It's not a feature film, but I think...
It's an hour, so it's as long as some of the...
It is longer than the Red Riders we've covered.
Right.
And I get the impression from the PR that they were treating each episode as a movie. A 1-hour movie was the approach. I don't know if we should buy that or not, but...
They were certainly... Yes, you're right. It's an anthology kind of show, so each episode has a different director. The eponymous master of horror.
Yeah.
So each one's directed by a different director who's working in the horror field.
Yeah, so we've got like John Carpenter, Toby Hooper, John Landis, Don Coscarelli, Stuart Gordon's in there.
Yep.
And
this week's one, Dario Argento.
Dario Argento, yeah.
Who was famous Giallo film director.
Yeah.
Kind of began the genre, essentially, with films like Suspiria and Profondo Rosso and Bird with Crystal Plumage.
Yeah.
So, and we've talked about him before, obviously, when we talked about our Diabolic episode. So... And not much to say about his more recent work, but this is probably as good as it gets.
This is like late period, actually. I don't think he did more than 3 or 4 things after this. This was 2005.
Yes.
Showtime is competitor to HBO, kind of putting R-rated stuff on TV, because it's by subscription. Let's do a pause the podcast.
Boy, this is R-rated.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to say pause, at least to read the comic.
Oh, yeah. We'll put a link in the show notes.
And there's some twists in there and stuff.
I completely agree.
And you can find it, you can find it online. The story's called Jenifer, spelled Jenifer.
Yes.
1 N, 1 F. It appeared originally in Creepy Presents, just Creepy magazine, number 63 from 1974. You can Google it, Google Read Online, and you'll find it. It's a 10-page story.
You pop a link in the show notes?
Yeah, I can do that.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. It's an absolute cracker.
Yeah, so I definitely pause and read that. I have not made up my mind about the show yet. Now, the thing I will say is, on Wikipedia and various other places, it says loosely based on the comic story Jenifer. I don't think it was loosely. I think it's pretty tight.
Yeah, loosely based.
Yeah. So
it's pretty much beat for beat.
We're going to spoil that as well, but I will say it's a bit tricky to find. I had to do some work to find a good quality copy that was downloadable.
The TV show.
The TV episode. And in Australia, at least, on Amazon Prime, they've got Masters of Horror Season 2.
But not Season 1.
But not Season 1.
Well, that's a bummer, because the Season 1's supposed to be the good one.
It's supposed to be good, but there were 2 episodes that got slightly edited, or 2 episodes that were affected by censorship.
Yes.
This one and Takashi Miike's Imprint, the final episode, which didn't even air completely.
You can only get it on DVD.
Yeah, they were like, we're not showing this. Because it's too much. So that season is completely not on Prime. I don't know what Season 2 is like. I haven't seen any of these before, but I will note that it's rated MA-15 on Prime. So I don't know. There's no way this would be MA-15 in any universe, even edited. We watched the cut version.
Who knows, because Sheena was PG.
Yeah.
In the universe where Sheena can be PG, anything can happen.
Okay. Yeah, maybe so.
But yes, to return to the theme with which you began, we've come close to episodes that have covered things that aren't feature films. But this is the first time we have definitely crossed a line
Yes.
into something that was never a feature film and could never be considered a feature film. This is a big step for the podcast. Kumar, are you okay with it?
Yeah, I'm okay, because we're going to do the same next week as well. So, as I said last week, we've got some time constraints. We need to do some stuff that's shorter. But then after reading this and going through it panel by panel and watching the episode, I took so many notes. I was like, this is going to be a long episode. So we might have saved on the prep work, but I think the recording's going to be pretty long for this one.
Well, that's okay. I don't have anywhere to be.
Okay. So I want to start out by talking a little bit about Creepy Magazine. Came out from Warren Comics. Warren was a magazine publisher that started in 1957 by a fellow named James Warren. They mostly published, maybe their most famous magazine was Famous Monsters of Filmland. And then in 64, they moved into publishing comics. Now, their comics were published in magazine size, and they were in black and white. They were not in color. So by going for the magazine size, they could get stacked on magazine racks and not on comic racks, and they did not have to abide by the Comics Code Authority, which had shut down EC Comics 10 years earlier.
Right.
So they were able to do stuff that was a little bit more edgy, a little bit more upper teen, maybe even a little bit higher than that.
Oh, yeah.
But their model was almost the same as the EC Comics model. They had a couple of horror magazines. They had a short-lived war comic called Blazing Combat, which is a bit like the EC Comics, but it was like, this is Vietnam stories, and it was a little bit more grown up, like in terms of language and violence, everything like that. They also published Vampirella, which we'll be coming back to.
We'll be coming back to Vampirella.
Yeah. And that kind of led to the introduction of other similar magazines like Heavy Metal in the US, and Skywald was another publisher that was doing a bunch of horror magazines like black and white, large. There were some color stories in there, but another thing that was similar to EC, they just had all the best artists in there. They had Richard Corbin, Bernie Wrightson, Steve Ditko, Alex Stowe. Some of those people worked, a lot of the EC artists came over and worked on Warren's stories.
Yeah. I really love some of these are stories that I've read.
Yeah.
So this is a magazine that I've read sort of online because I quite like horror comics. And yeah, you're right. A lot of the best stories and really fantastic art appeared in Creepy.
Yes. And Eerie. That was the other, the sister title.
Eerie, I think, I haven't read as much Eerie, but I've certainly read a lot of Creepy.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of most of the background. I guess I would also mention maybe that they had a lot of Spanish and Filipino artists on there, which we'll come back around to because some of those artists were pretty important and will have effects on other episodes of this podcast.
Oh.
All right, so we'll talk about this story, Jenifer. Written by Bruce Jones and illustrated by Bernie Wrightson. I think this was before Wrightson was on Swamp Thing. He was doing a bunch of stuff for Warren. He was very young at the time. I met him at San Diego Comic-Con, I think in 97.
Wow.
And I was surprised that he seemed like a young dude. I thought he was going to be like 60.
Right.
Because he'd been working in the 70s. I was like, when did you break? And he said, I was like 17 or something like
amazing.
that when he broke into comics.
But a familiar story, really, isn't it? A lot of people really started young in comics.
Yeah. Yeah, back in those days especially, yeah. Yeah. So it's in this beautiful, everything's done in a gray wash. It's really lush. Much like DC Comics artists, they paid them really well to do these 8-10 page stories.
It looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's just
fantastic.
Absolutely dripping in shadows of all gradations of gray.
Yes.
Really handled very meticulously and lovingly.
Very detailed.
Yes. Lots of every I'm looking at these pages, like every leaf on every tree. He's treated everything in some way. Yeah.
Really great. I mean, the way it's lit.
Yes.
I mean, he's...
Yeah.
Obviously, there's no lighting as such, but the way he uses light and shadow...
Yeah.
It just looks... It looks so great.
Yeah. It's really phenomenal. So we've got this guy who's walking through the woods, and it's narrated by him, which is, we learn by the end, is a bit of a cheat in itself for this guy to be narrating the story. But he's telling the story in retrospect.
Well, yes.
And he's saying that now that I understand what happened, that there was a purpose to it all, it only makes her existence that much more horrifying. That's like the opening sentence of it. So, and then he mentions that he heard some sobbing in the woods. Like he's walking through the woods with a gun, he's with a rifle, he's a hunter, and he stumbles across this man holding an axe, and he's got this girl, and we're looking at her from behind, and he's holding her down. So she's on her knees, and he's got her head on a stump of a tree, like a tree trunk, and he's about to murder her with the axe. Cut off her head is what it looks like.
Yep.
Important point about this panel is that we see her from behind, but Wrightson has drawn her, the draping of her clothing in such a careful way. She's very clearly a shapely woman.
Yes.
Although we don't see much, but the way he's drawn the dress and the fabric of it, it's really perfect. And this Hunter is shocked by what he's seeing about to happen. He warns the guy to not kill her. Stop or I'll shoot. The guy doesn't stop. He shoots the guy. Blam. The guy falls over, almost dead. And as he's dying, he says one last word, which is Jenifer.
Yes.
Then he dies. Then this guy, the Hunter, finally looks at this girl and her face. We turn the page. This is page 3. Panel 2, it's not a full page or anything, is horribly disfigured.
Yeah.
And he actually handles the shading a little bit differently of her face than other people. Like, sometimes it's like there's more realistic shadows of all the weird lumps and stuff on her face. So she's got her eyes are 2 different sizes, but they're not like eyes, they're just big black orbs.
Like insect eyes almost.
Yeah, which reflect him in some panels. I think he can see his own reflection in them, which I think is really...
On the penultimate page, I think.
Yeah, metaphorically important. Her mouth is all twisted, and she has these big, weird front teeth that, like, overhang her mouth. They're, like, huge, like saber tooths, but there's, like, 4 or 5 in a row, and they're all different sizes and shapes, and her face is all lumpy and veiny and stuff. Absolutely grotesque.
She's so disfigured, like, doesn't look human, essentially.
Yeah.
You wouldn't mistake this for a human face.
Yes, you wouldn't think it was a human, if you hadn't seen the body in the earlier panels. And also, he had figured out when the guy was dying, because when he was about to kill the guy was crying. It wasn't the girl that was crying, it was the killer.
The girl never makes a sound.
Yes, she never makes a sound.
He quickly realizes that it must have... The sobbing, he heard the high sobbing that he heard at first was the man.
Yes.
Not the girl.
And she seems to be nonverbal. She maybe doesn't understand him. His word is... doesn't understand a word I say, obviously retarded. Now...
This is the 70s.
It is the 70s, but also this might be a guy that uses the word retarded even if it was 2024. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
It's not the author speaking, but I do want to highlight that word because it comes up again in the show.
Yes, it does.
In exactly the way you're talking about.
That was really... That's an interesting touch, the way it was in the show.
Yeah. So, okay, so he's like, well, even however deformed she is, she's a creature that deserves compassion. He's like, okay, I got to take care of this girl. But he's killed a man.
Yeah.
So it's like, so what am I going to do? Okay, well, I just won't tell anybody that I killed this man. I'll just say I found this girl in the woods.
My business, my life will be upended.
Yeah.
Look, I just think I'll just bury him.
Yeah.
And then the caption then says, like, looking back, this is crazy.
Yeah, I should have known then I was beginning to act irrationally. Yeah.
So this is foreshadowing. So on the last couple of pages, we've had hints that there's a plan, a method to the madness that's occurring.
Yeah, from that first caption, like, I should have known, like, I had never imagined that there was actually...
He is not wholly in charge of his own actions. He's fulfilling someone else's plan.
Yes. And I also want to point out on this page that we've often talked about in horror comics, you don't have sound or motion. You're limited to still images. So if you're going to make a scary horror comic, you've got to have an image that you can stare at for 5 minutes and still be freaked out by. And this face is so good. I've read this comic so many times, and I don't rush past this page. I stare at this face, this crazy, almost photorealistic, the way he's shaded it. You really can't take your eyes off it, and it's really unsettling.
Yes.
So he takes her to the authorities. There's a trial. The judge decides he's gonna place her in an institution, but he says...
He feels compelled.
Yeah, I felt compelled by those hideously compelling eyes.
Yes.
To adopt her. So he adopts the girl. But keep this in mind, she's his daughter. Legally his daughter at this stage.
Yes.
He takes the girl home. The family's freaked out. Like, he's got a wife and two kids.
Yeah.
And they're like freaked out. And he's like, well, she's gonna live with us. Her name's Jenifer. And there's a scene where they're at the dinner table and the kids can't eat because they're looking at her horrible face.
Horrible looking.
The wife
speaks.
Yeah.
The wife is bitten by her.
Was it the wife or one of the kids?
I think It doesn't
Yes, it doesn't
I'm
matter.
pretty sure it's the wife,
But
because it's the wife in the TV
even
show.
before that, after dinner, the wife's like, "You have to get rid of her," and like, I can't get rid of her. She trusts me; it would kill her.
Yeah.
And then she bites someone in the family.
I'm pretty sure it's the wife, because
Yeah.
that's who it is in the TV show.
Yes.
Then he's growing more and more. What sort of the comic uses the word haggard.
Yeah.
So her presence is having some kind of effect on him, or at least his circumstances now.
Yes.
And weeks are going by, so she's living with him for weeks.
Yes. This is an interesting thing. So, okay, we get it after the bite. In the next page, we get a panel where the wife's in bed with the husband, telling him, "You have to get rid of her. You have to." So the next day, he tries to take her to an institution to drop her off, but then he looks at her, that awful silent pleading, those bulbous protrusions that were her eyes would fill and tears would start down her distorted cheeks, and he thinks, "Jenifer, dear God," and then he just comes home, and the wife says, "Well," and he says, they were overcrowded, I'll try again tomorrow." So the assumption is they weren't overcrowded.
No, of
we have
course
to
not.
assume that he just drove
He's
home.
been-
He couldn't overcome his compassion for her, his feelings for her.
Possibly, or
Yeah.
perhaps something else is going
Something else is going on. So he feels that there's pressure, the unbearable pressure that's about to. So now we've had 5, 6 panels with this family. I do feel, in a comic book way, this is kind of like, it's a very easy comics, and we're just rushing through. This is not the stuff you're supposed to focus on. Is the weeks of build up that's probably happening with this family.
We've just been told that that's what's happening, and this is something comics can do.
Yes.
It's not something you can do with a TV episode,
No.
which we'll get to.
No, it would be very clumsy in a TV episode where it'd be
Yes.
like, well, this is
We can't just have a caption that weeks later.
weeks later, or the pressure had become unbearable. Like, we have to see the pressure. So one night he goes in to take a bath, and then the family cat has been drowned in the bathtub. Mm-hmm. This is the last straw for the wife and kids.
They leave.
They leave in a cab. They get in a cab. He watches them go. He confronts her, Jenifer, the man on the sofa. His name is Jim, by the way. I
Yes.
just noticed that.
Yes.
He says, "You little whore, you'll pay for this. I swear I'll get rid of you somehow."
Horror. You little horror.
You little whore. For some reason,
You have a North American pronunciation
Yeah.
of the word horror.
on the sofa is a copy of P.G. Wodehouse's Laughing Gas. I looked this up.
didn't
It's a
notice
book
that.
about, it's some kind of soul-swapping Hollywood story.
Whoa!
Yeah, I don't know what, if it's, maybe Bernie was reading it at the time. He was drawing. I don't know why it's in here. Anyway.
Well, if there's mysterious phenomena occurring in that novel, there's
guess
certainly
so.
mysterious phenomena
I guess
occurring
so.
in Jenifer.
So now that the wife is gone, that night Jenifer comes into.
Is it that night or is it later? I think it might be later.
Well, he couldn't get. He says I'm going to get rid of you somehow, and then the next panel is I didn't get rid of her. I couldn't. Every time I tried, every time I threatened, she'd look up and with those eyes. Oh, then one night the situation approached insanity. It is insanity. She comes into the room, and she's wearing one of the wife's dresses,
Yep.
and he's like,
Oh, it's
"Get
a
away,
nightdress.
get away!"
It's a nightgown.
Yeah. But she comes on, she gets into bed with him, starts kissing him, licking his ear. He's like, "Lord, Lord, help me." We get a long shot from overhead of the bed, like way above the ceiling. So it looks miles away. And he's like, "Help me, help me," in a very tiny voice. But he's doing it. So
He's being... Yeah.
they are doing
They have
it.
this
And
sexual relationship. And
I have to say, part of the problem with this story what I mean is, what's compelling about it is sometimes your brain says no and your body says yes.
Well, yeah. Yes.
I mean, we have been there, and it's the part of this, and it really plays on comic booky tropes of this shapely woman that is supposed to be a sex object, and it's pulling on the opposite side where we've got Bernie Wrightson has drawn this amazingly realistic, horrific face on her, and it's like, don't do it, don't do it. There's like two sides of her. She's coming on to him.
Well, this is rape.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
A man can be raped.
Yeah.
A man can be sexually assaulted, and that's what's happening, and he's powerless.
Yes.
For some reason.
Yes. Yeah. It's the body. Yeah. He's reacting. His body's reacting to her body.
Yes, of course, and that's all the explanation that's needed.
Yeah.
On top of that, Jenifer does have some kind of mesmerism.
Yeah. Yeah. So, by the way, she is legally his daughter.
Yeah. So it just makes it even more.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. Like, as you said, you couldn't have put this in EC Comics.
Yeah. No,
Because
right,
this is an
exactly.
incestuous rape.
Exactly. So the next page, he is visiting a freak show, and he's hiring the guy that runs a carnival to break into his own house. He says, "Don't worry, it's my own house. Just break in and take this girl. Take this girl away." He can't get rid of her himself.
That's right. He's incapable of getting rid of her himself.
Yeah.
He needs someone to kidnap her, essentially.
Yeah.
So he pays a carny who's interested in her for his freak show.
Yeah.
This is apparently an era in which freak shows still exist. This is when this is set. I didn't think they'd existed since the 19th century, but that's okay.
He says, I can't bring her here myself. She doesn't trust me," is what his excuse is to the carnival guy.
Yeah.
So then he waits away from home, waits for the carnival guy to go in there, kidnap her. He goes home, he looks around, she's not there. He's relieved. He's like, I'm free. Then he opens the fridge, and the carnival guy has been fridged. So he's in there.
Verb.
With his, it's normally a term used to describe what happened to Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern's girlfriend.
That's
she
right.
was fridged.
That's a comic. That's a comic thing.
It's a comic book reference. Yes, he's fridged. So he comes home. The carnival guy's been fridged. His intestines are hanging out.
So he's been eaten.
It's super gory. Yeah, and he falls out of the fridge and he freaks. So now,
freaks out. He starts laughing.
Yeah,
and then
he goes to ha 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 ha.
And then there's a great. I love this panel.
Yeah.
This might be my favorite panel because in the background is Jenifer
looking. She's watching this.
Watching.
She's got that sad look on her face.
Well, she never changes expression.
Master sad. Yeah.
It's a face that's incapable of expression.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, it just stays the same.
Yeah.
She's just in the background.
Yeah.
Like she's disappeared.
Yeah.
I guess she's there because she hasn't left.
Yes.
But I mean, we know she hasn't left because she stuffed a guy in the fridge.
Yeah.
But it's just.
Well,
she's like the spectre at the feast.
Yes.
She's haunting him.
Yes. And part of this is some sort of design which she is overseeing.
Yes, that's right. This is yes.
So they have to go on the run. They're on the road going from motel to motel. We're given this information basically one panel. She comes in his bed almost every night.
Yeah, he says, "Not tonight, please.
Not tonight,
Jenifer.
please, Jenifer. Not tonight." He's begging. He becomes a drunk.
Yep.
He decides he's going to kill himself.
Well, they're living in an abandoned farmhouse.
Yes, that's right.
He's drinking. The only time he gets any peace is when Jennifer's asleep.
Yeah.
Even when she's sleeping, though, something ties him to her.
Yes, and also he finds a new supply of liquor mysteriously waiting for him every night. So she's getting liquor from somewhere and keeping him drunk.
Yes.
Deliberately. She's keeping him drunk. So one day he's wandering around, he says, maybe I'll get a job, and he picks up a newspaper to look in the advertisement, and he sees a headline that says child missing, and he's like, oh God.
Yeah.
So he knows it's going to be her.
Another great panel.
He comes back home, to the farmhouse, he opens the door to the downstairs, he opens it up, and there's a...
At the storm cellar?
Yeah, storm cellar, and there's a child half-eaten, and Jennifer's eating this child.
Yeah.
It's like just gore, intestines, guts from like the chest down.
And this is it.
Yeah,
he's snapped now. He runs into the nearby town, smashes a window, and grabs an axe that's on display in the front window of some shop. I'm not sure what shop sells axes in the front windows. Perhaps an axe shop.
Yeah.
Anyway, he grabs it, and then...
This is when we have the panel of he's looking at her, he's gonna... Oh, she's there. She's right there behind him.
Yeah.
Yeah. He turns, she's there, and then we get the panel of him looking in his own reflection in her eyes.
Yeah.
And he takes her to the woods, ties her up, puts her head on a...
Yes, but
down
then...
on a stump. Then he waits.
Yeah.
He sits and waits until he hears footsteps.
He's forced to wait. I mean, the captions are clear.
I just sat there quietly. Nothing stirred. I stared at Jenifer and she stared back for hours until I heard the footsteps.
Yeah.
It was then I realized her full power, her full devastating potential. I tried to scream. My throat wouldn't work. I choked on my tears. Jenifer, please don't make me. He lifts the axe. Blam. He's shot down. The hunter cradles his dying body and Jim says, Jenifer, as he dies. So it ends like it began.
Yeah. So the narration has been he's essentially...
His
I suppose
dying
the trope
narration.
is when his life is flashed before his eyes.
Oh, yes, I guess so.
But it doesn't matter.
He does say, there was no way to explain, no time to explain, barely the strength to utter a feeble warning as her power faded and a night closed in forever. So it's in that moment he's narrated all of this.
I think that's the first time he specifically mentions power. So Jenifer... I mean, it doesn't really matter how Jennifer's doing it, because the point of this comic is that it's a surreal nightmare scenario.
Yes. I didn't read it as supernatural, mystical in any way. I just saw it as emotional madness.
No, I think you can read it that way, but
Emotional power. I read it as emotional power, not mystical power.
No, I suppose, and that's probably the more mature reading. You don't gain anything by thinking her as a supernatural creature. But for me, I feel like she has some kind of power of mesmerism. Some sort of telepathic power to compel him to do what she wants. She's a kind of parasite.
I read it as just a yes-no, the body versus the face.
Yeah, I think, as I said, you don't gain anything through my reading.
Well, I think your reading is correct if we assume that it has happened 50 times. But we don't know that this might have only happened 2 times. We don't know.
We've swapped roles. Usually you're the one that wants to break down just precisely how the magic works.
Yeah.
And I'm the one that usually says, no, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So she's some kind of perhaps thing that parasitizes human beings because she uses, it might be part of her life cycle.
Yeah.
She can compel people to accept her into their lives.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of her. And then at the end, she can force you to kill yourself through this contrived scenario where you wait for somebody to come and stop you.
Also I think that the fact of her buying the alcohol is a really key moment for me. In reading it is not supernatural in the sense that she is planning, she wants the next guy. Like she's carnivorous, let's say. Like she needs another man. When she kind of bores at one man, I don't know if bores is the word, but she needs to move on to the next.
When he can't sustain her any longer is how I think it. For me, I suppose I see your reading is probably the more mature one, because if we see it as like an abusive relationship, of course an abuser would ply their victim with alcohol. For me though, I just think, where'd she get it?
Yeah.
How does she
how did she get it? Yeah, exactly.
She must get it through mesmerism.
I have to assume she stole it.
How? How does she even know what it is? She never speaks.
No.
To me...
No, she knows more. They say that maybe she doesn't understand. I think she understands everything.
I think, for me, it's proof of her, I suppose, the fact that there's something supernatural going on, because I can't see how she could possibly get alcohol for him.
Yeah.
And he never sees... She never gives it to him.
Yeah.
She just leaves it on the step for him to find when he returns from his nocturnal ramblings.
Yeah.
But I'm forced to conclude that nothing is gained through this reading. I think your one is probably the more sophisticated.
Also, I think the fact that he waited for someone, to me, is like, my reading is he needs someone to take care of Jenifer. He can't kill her. He actually can't kill her. He's supposed to kill her. He's right at the edge, but he's like, somebody needs to take care of Jenifer, so I need to wait for the next guy to show up.
Yeah. But he says, don't make me. Look, I don't think you're wrong. But when I read it, I think he's being compelled.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Compelled by her. Not compelled by his own conscience, but compelled by her.
Yeah.
The malign power she has over him.
Well, you know what? This TV episode plays it both ways as well, I think.
Yeah.
In a very more literal way, which we'll...
Yes,
talk about.
I feel the TV show's a bit... Yeah, well, we will come
I'll jump ahead to make the point about the show right now.
All right, good. Yeah, why not?
In the show, the first time that Frank, not Jim, touches her, she scratches his hand. That scratch becomes infected, and you're like, is something going on here? And then at the end, when the hunter shows up and the history repeats itself, she does not scratch that hand. So it seems like the first time you're like, oh, there's something going on with this infection that's causing him to behave this way. But then she doesn't do it to the next guy, which would have been the obvious sting at the end of the episode to have the scratch happen, so we know this guy's...
She does stroke his hand, though.
She strokes his hand, yes, but she doesn't...
I think I have a different spin on this scratch, which we can get to.
Okay.
But I invite you, the listeners, to read this comic. You can read it very quickly. It will take you 5 minutes, and then see. I
read it for longer than 5 minutes.
You could read it in 5 minutes. You could take much longer if you linger over every panel, the way Kumar does. But I invite you to come up with your own interpretation. See which of us you sympathise with more.
Yeah. So, this episode of Masters of Horror aired on November 18th, 2005. It was directed by Dario Argento, as we mentioned, late Argento. Starring Steven Weber.
He also wrote the credits called the teleplay. Yeah.
He's got 3 writing credits. He's been active for a long time. He's on Wings. He wrote an episode of The Outer Limits.
Oh, cool! I didn't know
and
that.
some TV movie and this. So not a lot of writing credits. So, but I don't know exactly what the chain of events was here, but he was the Jack Torrance character in the TV version of The Shining in 1997, which is directed by Mick Garris, who is the showrunner of Masters of Horror.
Oh.
So
That explains.
there might have been
Did Mick Garris direct The Shining?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So I have a feeling that they had that relationship.
Yep.
And he's like, you want to come in and do it? Mick is like, you want to come and do an episode of this show?
Yep.
And he's like, okay,
Yes.
can I write it?
Yep.
And Mick trusts him.
Yes.
And then they...
This information is out there. Mick Garris has a podcast called Postmortem with Mick Garris.
Okay.
And he has talked about Masters of Horror on that podcast. However, it's hard to find which one specifically
Okay.
he discusses Jenifer. And we just didn't have enough time. Also, he has a biography, not written by him, but where apparently a lot of detail about Masters of Horror is present.
Okay.
So, if we'd had more time...
Did you see the interview with Dario Argento off the DVD? I found that.
I tried to find it, but I couldn't find it.
Okay, I found it. It's about a 15-minute feature.
Oh, great. I look forward to hearing about that. So this information is out there. There's information out there about this.
Yeah.
This process of how this came to be.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I just didn't have the time, or perhaps the Patreon funding, with which to acquire a copy of Mick Garris's biography.
By the way, Steven Weber has been on iZombie. He's been on Tales from the Crypt.
Yes.
He's been on DS9. We haven't talked about our Star Trek appearances in a while, but he has been on DS9.
I did notice
He's
that.
been voices on Batman cartoons and Spider-Man. Yes.
He plays Alfred in 2 animated movies.
Yes, those are Batman 66 animated movies.
Yes, they are.
And some dozens of voices on the Spider-Man cartoons.
So he's one of us.
Yeah. Okay, so we start with cops in a car. It seems like they're on a stakeout, but they're not on a stakeout. They're just hanging out, eating. They're just shirking work, it seems like.
This is hilarious. It's very, I'm tempted to say very Argento, because shit doesn't matter in, causation. That doesn't matter. They're clearly on a stakeout. They're in a cop car.
Yeah.
They're eating Chinese food and drinking coffee.
Yeah.
And we have this bizarre shot with which it's not the first shot, but it's very close to being the first shot. It's from the top, it's the interior of the car from the top down. I don't know how they filmed this. Maybe they took the top of the car off.
Oh, yeah. Quite possibly.
And we can see down, they're eating this vile Chinese food. We can see right down into the Chinese food containers. And there's a fly buzzing around. And they're swatting it away.
Yeah.
And this goes for about half a minute.
Yeah.
And
I wonder if it's significant.
look, I think I couldn't say for certain. There's a few of these things which I think are present. I've written down themes of poison, infection, parasitism.
Rot. Yeah.
Oh, rot, yeah. So I think it would have been made more sense, I suppose, if it was a mosquito. I don't know if it was a real fly or not. It might have been computer generated.
My guess is it was CG, because they were waving it away, and then they finally got out the window. That wouldn't happen with a real fly. It was too big for a real fly,
Of course it was CG. Of course it was.
Yeah.
But it looks fine, because it's just...
It's tiny flies.
It's tiny
2005.
fly. 2005
no
CG
bad.
is capable of doing
Yeah.
a tiny fly.
Yeah.
So I feel like Steven Weber, he's made an effort to have some themes, perhaps, in his...
I think so.
Screenplay?
I think that making it a change to him being a cop, which isn't that important, actually is good, jumping ahead, after he kills this guy, his chief, his commander, is like, you need to go down to psych.
Yeah.
I insist.
Yeah.
And we don't know if he actually goes down there, because we never cut to the next shot. We don't see if but that is like significant to me.
Yes.
That's a way that we don't have the first person narration. That's immediately he's got PTSD from this opening incident.
Yeah. Well,
so and everything just piles on top of that.
Yes. Yeah.
And they don't shy away from it. It comes up again and again, the PTSD from it. His wife's like, you had to kill him. He's like, he freaks out at that. And when he gets to the office again, the lady who's in charge of Jenifer, she's like, hey, you had to kill that guy. And he says, that's what people keep telling me. And obviously he's really shooken up by it.
Yes.
So anyway, they're on the stakeout. And then randomly,
of nothing.
Not the guy they're looking for, but some rando who looks like maybe a homeless guy, very dirty guy, comes out pulling this girl. We only see her from behind, works a bit like but they're kind of under a bridge. Shot in Vancouver. It's supposed to be Oregon, by the way.
Oh, yes, it was shot in Vancouver. Yes, it was.
He pushes her down like over a barrel, and he's about to chop her with an axe. And Frank has noticed this, but his partner's like, whatever. Frank gets out.
No. Frank has just gone out to...
Oh, that's right.
He's... I thought, he's taken his coffee out. He's gone out maybe to have a leak or something. He's taken his coffee with him. He drinks some of the coffee and then he spits it out.
Yes, that's right.
So that you can see it's coffee.
Yeah.
Like, up to this point I was thinking, maybe this is Chinese tea. Maybe they're... I really hope they're not eating Chinese food and drinking coffee. But they were.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the most unsettling thing about the whole episode. And, he spits it out and he throws his cup away. And then, as you say, he sees this occur. He calls out to his partner, but his partner can't hear him because he's listening to, like, classic rock really, really loudly.
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem like good stakeout behaviour.
No.
So maybe they are just Skyping off.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it just looks like a stakeout. Why would they eat inside their car?
I don't know.
It's fucking bizarre. It's very Argento, like dreamlike.
Yes.
A lot of this episode is like that, actually.
Yes.
I think it's something of an uneasy marriage between Argento's dreamlike imagery and Weber's attempt to kind of have a psychological / thematic screenplay.
But I will say, it seemed like if I hadn't seen Argento's name in the credits, I'm not sure that I would have identified it, because it doesn't have the screaming primary colors.
No, of course
or
not.
things like that. It's kind of dialed back.
Yeah.
Apparently there were 3 DOPs on it, and he talks about in the interview about how they were talking about the colors and things like that. I was like, okay, so I guess it's there, and I wasn't paying close enough attention. But there is a shot here in this moment. So the axe killer is there. He's about to kill her, and Frank says, "Don't stop or I'll shoot." The guy doesn't stop, but he holds up the axe, and we get a reflection of his face in the axe. Which had to be done in post. I don't think they shot it that way.
100% in post. You can't see a person's reflection in it. It's meat. It's not an axe. It's a meat cleaver.
Sorry, yes, it's a meat cleaver.
And no way can you get a person's reflection in a meat cleaver. Like that.
But that was a real Argento move. I felt like.
I thought, oh wow, is it going to be like this all the way through?
Yeah,
no, unfortunately, it wasn't. There's not enough of that kind of stuff in it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but it was crazy.
So he shoots the guy, and he thinks the guy's dead, but then the guy pops up and he says, "Jenifer!" like that, and then he dies. Frank goes over to the girl. We see her face. Now, we only see the top part of her face, which are the 2 black eyes.
Yep.
I have to say, I think the handling of this is really interesting. So we don't get the full face like we do in the comic, because it's not a comic.
No, it's not a comic. It's good until it isn't. Argento's pretty careful for the first 15-20 minutes not to show...
Well, when they get to the police station, there's a shot where she's behind a glass door in another room. So it's not a close-up shot, but that's the first full... Her hair's over half her face, but that's the first time we see the mouth and stuff, and that was an unsettling shot, because she was just standing there at a distance. She wasn't doing anything. She's just standing there. It's not a close-up. It was really freaky, that moment.
Yes. Unfortunately, it doesn't last, and we get a lot of we get a lot of scenes later on where we just kind of have close-ups of the makeup, and it just looks like makeup.
Yeah.
But early on, it was really well handled.
Yeah.
As you say, often her face is obscured by hair.
Yeah.
We only see part of her eye, part of her forehead.
Yeah.
We see the police guy. His name's Frank. We see his reactions, but we don't see what he's reacting to as such.
Yeah.
It starts off good, but unfortunately it doesn't last. And later on we just kind of see her in all her glory. And it's a bit underwhelming.
Yeah. Okay, so, by the way, she was clearly the one screaming.
Yes. Oh, this one's verbal. In fact, she makes a lot of noise.
That's important. I think that actually works, and I'll tell you why when we get to the end.
Okay.
So she was the one screaming. It's not the guy sobbing.
Yes.
He doesn't hear sobbing noises. It's her screaming. That's what brings Frank out. Oh, by the way, another thing, if I can rewind a second, the credit says based on the short story by Bruce Jones.
Yes.
I did not like that.
No. And you know why, though? Because this is before Iron Man.
Yes, it is before Iron Man, but it's bizarre to me. Argento talks about in the interview. He talks about how he could choose which episode do you want to do, and he read the comic, and he was like, and he's Italian, so he appreciates comic art.
Of course.
And he's like, I like this comic, and there are shots in this that are taken from Wrightson's art. The angles are exactly the same, and they show side by side.
You mentioned Jenifer lying over a barrel.
Yeah.
So that her rump is kind of like in the air. That's straight out of those first panels.
Yeah, I will say, I think there's a marvelous substitution here, because she can't wear that dress the way Wrightson puts that dress on her.
Of course.
So what are you going to do? There's actually a substitute where we get to see her in the shower, and I'm like, this is how they solved that problem.
Right.
We get to see her completely naked from behind, and it has the same effect of seeing her
because she's very shapely.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so
you're right, but yeah. I mean, the in that earlier scene, when she's over the... I mean, you're right, she's wearing a dirty shift.
Yeah.
You can't, as you said, you can't make that as quote-unquote erotic as Wrightson's art does.
Yeah.
But yet, it does look similar. And, yeah, you can see presumably Argento... I'm so pleased that he read the comic.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't surprise me at all, of course, because of the attitude the Italians have towards comics. It's different. And yet, to put based on the short story, that's
by Bruce Jones.
Pretty egregious.
And not Wrightson's name, crazy.
But this is the reverse of now, of course.
Yeah.
You just announce things are based on comics even when they aren't.
Yeah.
But back then, presumably... perhaps Mick Garris was behind it. Someone involved in the production side thought this will bring down. This classy piece of art I'm making is going to be brought down by if we announce to the audience that it's based on a comic book.
Yeah. Okay. So as we said, he meets with this chief.
This is our first sign of the scratch as well.
Yeah, she scratches him. That's right.
I didn't actually notice that she was the one that scratched him. I thought he just picked it up in the fracas.
Oh.
But I thought he already had it on his hand.
I thought it was when he was touching her head and her shoulders, lifting her or something.
It's possible.
Okay. I might be wrong.
It doesn't...
I don't remember.
It depends on your...
But there's...
Your reading is that she scratches him, and so she's marked him in some fashion.
Because there's a lot of attention to it as the episode progresses, that it's looking infected and stuff, and then she licks it later on.
He does it... So, this scratch... We'll talk about the scratch. The scratch is it's another kind of Argento touch to have a thing you don't know what that thing is. He focuses on something, and then later on in the film you're like, oh, that's why. In this case, I think, but I also think it might be Weber's screenplay as well, because it bothers him throughout the film. And at one point, he actually goes to the bathroom and he angrily tells his wife, "I'm going to go wash this cut." He goes to the bathroom and then sucks it.
Yes. And as if he's sucking poison out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. But he's not poison. Why is he sucking it? Yeah, interesting. Really?
I think this is meant to be... I think this probably came from Weber.
Yeah.
And he's trying to say something thematic about what's going on. He's been poisoned.
Yeah.
Either by his PTSD or by his own urges.
By Jenifer.
Or ultimately by Jenifer herself.
So his chief says, you have to go down to psych, it's standard operating procedure. Then we don't get the psych scene, we see him next in the office. So we don't know if he actually went there, as I mentioned. They're taking Jenifer away. This is when we see her face at the window in the distance. He goes home to his family, tells his wife that he killed a man today, and he's shaken up by it. His son comes home, he's got a goth son.
Yep. Yep. Prince of Darkness, he calls him.
Yeah.
And, like the son, doesn't stay for tea, just grabs a bunch of rolls, goes to his room.
Yeah.
He has some kind of fractious home life.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So next scene is the one where he's in the bathroom getting ready for bed. The wife has got a drink and a book. When he comes out, she throws that stuff aside, and she's like, let's do it. She strips. She says, it's been a long time. This is
that was
really
interesting too.
This is key, because at the end of the kill at the end, that boy is having trouble with his girlfriend who's off with some other guy.
Yeah.
And Jenifer goes for that kid as well. I think there's some kind of parallel here.
You might be right, because otherwise that conversation makes no sense otherwise, so I think you might be right.
She's like, we haven't done it in a while, let's do it. And
it's so odd. He's clearly traumatized.
He is traumatized.
She says to him...
Maybe this is her... Because her first reaction when he says, I killed a man, she kind of hesitates. I don't know if she knows quite how to deal with this, but this is maybe her way of trying to comfort him in some way. But I think she's actually looking out for number one. I actually think she's like, she wants her satisfaction. They start kissing.
I think she says, there's some a dirty talk, I suppose.
Yeah.
She says...
Mommy fix. That was an interesting line.
Yeah.
Based on all the stuff that's going on in this, because we'll learn in the next scene that they had to put Jenifer into an institution. Maybe because she's underage, they can't find any information about her.
Well, she has to go somewhere, and she's non-verbal, although she does make sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway. So I don't know why she does this. It seems like the worst possible thing to do to a person who's just killed a man.
Yeah.
But perhaps, as you say, it's her attempt to make things better, to deepen her connection with him, because she's worried about him.
But the way she reacted when she put her wine aside and her book, I think she was just looking out for herself, really.
Yeah. Anyway, she strips off.
She strips off, they start making out. He flips over on him immediately, and then we start getting visual flashbacks to the killing and to Jenifer.
Yes.
And all that stuff, and he's obviously not okay. He seemingly tries to sodomize her in this scene, and she jumps up, and she's like, what the hell are you thinking? And that's the end of that. So now we get the
This is interesting. I mean,
he's only thinking about Jenifer.
It might have just been rougher than usual, but it's also it could be.
She's telling him to stop. It's rougher than usual, but when she gets up and she says, "What the hell were you thinking?" It's that I don't know quite how to read that.
I'm inclined to agree with you. So why? So again, here we've got his urges.
Yeah.
Which comes up again and again. In this, Jennifer's power is sexual.
Yes.
If indeed she has a power.
Yes, but we don't know that yet.
Different from the comic, where maybe it's emotional
somehow,
or it's all within him.
But it turns sexual in the comic.
Yes, but to me that's just a dimension of the horror.
That's right.
It's just a dimension of the horror.
Yeah.
Here, Jennifer's holder over Frank is sexual in nature.
Yeah.
He's not. It's less compassion.
Yes.
Much more sexual.
Well, yes and no, because because he's thinking about not only about her when he's on his wife, he's thinking about killing that guy and all that stuff. And the next scene is he goes back to the office and he's like, "What happened to Jenifer?"
Yes.
Now again, he hasn't seen her body at this stage. And then the person who's in charge of social services is like, "Well, we have to put her in this institution. We don't know anything about her." Well, she said, and this is the line where she says she's nonverbal, she's retarded. Sorry, I mean mentally challenged.
Yeah.
But then Frank says retarded in the next line anyway. So he's the kind of guy that's only going to say retarded anyway.
I thought this was just a nod to the source.
Kind of is.
Yeah. And then she has a funny line, which is it's not a great line. He says, "Where is she now?" And she says, "She's in such and such institution." And he says, "That place?" It's like some sort of horrible place for people, some sort of asylum, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? And she says, "What can I say? The system eats its young."
Yes.
And so, maybe that looked good on paper.
I think it works because we don't know what she does.
These are professional. Well, I think she's his counselor, the person that he was supposed to see the day before, perhaps. I'm not sure. It's not clear. But it's such an odd line. These are professionals in their work environment. You don't say that kind of...
I don't know. I didn't mind it. Actually, I like the information that it suggested that she was a minor, that Jenifer was a minor. That was a bit of information that I got from that. That they at least determined that. They don't know how old she is.
To me, I think that's a good reading, a valid reading. My reading was that I saw it as part of the themes of, in this case, parasitism.
Yes.
So Jennifer's like a cuckoo.
Yes. Yeah.
She'll cast out. She inserts herself in the place of your loved ones, and they are cast out to starve.
Yeah.
And that going with the fly and the infected carton sucking the poison out and so on.
So this is where he goes to the institution. He sees Jenifer in the shower, and he decides to take her home. Now his wife and son are asleep. It's nighttime, and he puts her on the
sofa. Yep.
Couch on the sofa. He goes upstairs and then finds that she's come up there. Or the wife comes out of the shower and she's in their bedroom. She comes into their bedroom, right? And is watching him while he's asleep. The wife is in the shower. Wife comes out of the shower, sees this freak, starts screaming. By the way, Jennifer's not wearing any clothes. She's just wearing a towel, which falls down, so her breasts are exposed in this scene.
Jennifer is often naked.
Yeah.
Meant to, I think, emphasize her erotic power.
Yeah. The son comes in.
And the juxtaposition between her horrific features and her lush curves,
yes.
as it were.
So the son comes in. The son freaks out initially, but then his gaze softens and he starts smiling at her as he's looking down at her. And he says, the line is, she's got a great rack for a Morlock. Yeah. But the wife is immediately like, get out. There's no... Let's have dinner with her, try it for a few weeks in this case.
Well, they can't be, can they? I mean, and actually, this is in a TV show, you can't have weeks go past. You can, but it would be a bit contrived.
Weird. Yeah. And it makes more sense that she's like, get her out of here immediately.
It actually does make more sense. Because, she's not his daughter here. He hasn't adopted her. He's just apparently used his influence as a police officer to get her out of the institution. He's flashed his badge and just said, I'm taking her into custody. Yeah. And then he's taken her home, put her on the couch. Incidentally, she's got up and wandered during the night and met the family cat.
Yes, and they've had a hissing fight at each other.
Yes.
And she's gotten down on all fours like, get out of here, cat. Or you don't know quite what's going on.
So it's evil detecting cat.
Yes, evil detecting cat.
Just in case we were in any doubt.
Also, she has licked his hand in a strange way when he was putting her to bed. This is all before.
He gave her something to eat. I don't know what it was, but she's chewing away, masticating, and then she licks his hand. And this is a good shot. Yeah. Because her tongue's covered in whatever she was eating.
Yeah, yeah. She's really drooly, which is mentioned in the comic as about her drooling. Yeah.
It's so gross.
Yeah. It's really gross.
You feel the way that Argento wanted you to feel.
Yeah.
When you see her lick his hand.
Yeah.
Because No, a mouthful of food is never pleasant.
Yeah.
And yet, we see Frank's reaction, and his reaction, he's revolted.
Yeah.
And he does a pretty good job of selling it. There's also some sort of... He's unsettling. There's some
It's
sort
weird. He was like, what is this? What's
He's freaked
happening?
out.
Yeah, he's freaked out. So after this encounter with the wife, where the wife says, you have to get her out of here. The next day, he's in the car with her. They're parked somewhere. He's like, what are we going to do? She starts...
Well, we get a time-lapse shot of cars moving around streets.
Yeah.
So he has taken her, presumably.
Yeah.
She's tried to find another place for her. Unlike the comic where he was incapable of doing that.
Yes.
It's the end of the day. He's presumably tried to find somewhere nicer than that asylum. He couldn't. He says, as you say, they're sitting in the car, perhaps at the very stakeout place where he found her. Maybe that's a spot where he takes all his friends.
Yeah.
And, he says, what are we going to do? And then she
starts licking the hand again.
Yeah.
She puts his hand on her breast. She starts stripping.
Yeah.
He's like, stop. What are you doing? Stop. But she goes down on him. There's a graphic oral sex shot that was cut. It's in the video. And then she gets on top of him. She starts having sex with him. She's still making only these grunting noises.
So which become much more animalistic.
Yeah.
But, whatever. That's
she needed this. So, and then he goes home and the wife says, what happened? She said, every place was full. So this plays out very differently from the comic where he just goes out and pretends to look for a place. Here, the sex scene from after the wife leaves the family happens before.
Yes.
It happens in the car.
Yeah. And I think...
now we've got a sexual claw.
Yeah.
Instead of just a compassionate claw.
Or... Whatever, or as I said, for me it's telepathy. For you, it's some sort of emotional, some very human emotional, reasoning. I agree. I think this is deliberate. Jenifer's power is sexual in nature.
Yeah. So,
like the Shambler from.
Yeah. So initially I was like, I didn't quite like this change, but actually it didn't. I think it worked in the episode's favor. So. Now the cat gets killed in the bathroom again, but it does not get drowned. They walk in there, and she's got that cat in her teeth, and she's like shaking it like an animal.
And she offers its guts to Frank.
Yeah.
Like, here, have some.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
weird.
Yeah. Yeah, wild, gory thing where she's eating the guts of this cat. Next we get the shot down from the window of the cab with the wife and son leaving, just straight out of Wrightson. Then we get this sex scene again where it plays out the shadows, everything, all very much like the Wrightson layout. She comes into the bedroom that night.
Yeah.
They have sex.
Yeah, and here I think it's consensual.
Yeah, it's becoming that. Yeah.
I think there's two readings.
Oh, 100%. This is very explicit.
Yes.
Scene. It was the kind of scene where you hope that Weber and this actress were in a relationship, which probably I'm going to say almost 100% not.
No. No way.
Yeah.
It's very Italian. So,
yes.
It's consensual. So this is Frank's lust at play.
Yeah.
But also Jenifer has some kind of devastating sexuality.
Yes.
That is just accentuated by the fact that her face is so horrible.
Yeah.
The contrast between her the makeup job done on the face and the fact that she's some kind of model. I mean, that uneasy coexistence of those two things is kind of a dimension of how compelling her sexual powers are.
Yeah.
So it's partly his weakness, but also, I mean, I don't know. I think he's much less of a victim in this.
Yeah.
He has some kind of desire. He desires her.
Yeah.
And has some kind of need to perhaps control her.
Yeah.
But as well, at the same time, she's predatory.
Yes.
It's just the form of her predation is sexual in nature.
Well, not only that, she eats people. Because next we get...
she's literally predatory too.
Next we get Amy, the little girl next door. So we've seen her before.
May?
I thought it was Amy. Okay, anyway.
Well, they're anagrams.
Yes. So we get a scene that's plays a bit like the James Will Frankenstein, where Frankenstein meets the kid by the water. Yeah. And
but that didn't occur to me.
Well, he said in the interview, Argento said that he wasn't thinking of Frankenstein. He just...
Oh, good. It's just coincidence.
It
Great.
was just coincidence. So Amy is like laughing at this lady with the weird face and just like fun.
She's
but
such
then,
an innocent that she doesn't even know to
Then
be
we cut to Frank coming home, very similar to the comic with the shot down the stairs, and Jenifer is eating Amy, and Amy's just guts from like the waist down.
This is horrible.
And this is we don't get the kid death is that death is at the end of the comic. So we've had an added sex scene and an added child kill, because there's another child kill at the end of.
So I understand why this has happened, because I guess it ramps up the creepy factor. But also, I mean, isn't this where it would all go to hell? I mean, this is his neighbor who he likes, because he's greeted her a couple of times.
Yeah.
This is where he should have snapped.
Well, yes, so, but her hooks are in him. But we get the circus. He goes to the circus. He'd seen a poster for the circus earlier. He goes to the circus. I was surprised at this. I thought for sure this is not going to be in this, because it's 2005, as you mentioned. He goes to the circus.
It's in an alternate universe where there's still freak shows.
Same plan. He's like, go to my house, break in. I want you to do a B&E on my house. Get this girl out of there. I'll be away. Don't worry, I'm a cop.
Yeah. And then it's exactly like the comic. He comes home after his 2 days.
He's become a drunk at this stage.
He looks like shit too.
Yeah.
Big bags under his eyes.
Yeah.
Like, we can see that Jenifer's having a corrosive effect on his health.
Absolutely.
He comes home from his trip away, and it's just like the comic. He's happy. The place.
He's laughing.
Empty.
He's laughing.
The place
much like
is
in the
empty.
comic. He's
I
like
can get my life
so
back
pleased with
together.
himself. Yeah.
He opens the fridge again, just like in the comic.
Yeah.
And there's the carny. He's been fridged again.
Yes.
Out he falls.
Yeah.
And just like the comic, he breaks into hysterical laughter.
Yeah.
And here we get an odd touch. Instead of Jenifer's face just kind of poking around the door, which you can't do.
Yeah.
You can't really do that on the TV. So instead we see her. He's made an effort. We can see her through a screen door or a glass door. She's outside the house. What's she doing outside? I don't know. And she sees him laughing, and then she starts clapping and laughing.
Yeah. Oh, he did have an earlier breakdown after Amy was killed. I think he had a breakdown in the kitchen. That was good. There was good acting in there.
What did you do?
Yes.
Over and over.
Yes. Yeah. So the PTSD is piling on.
And then she embraces him.
Yeah.
She's calming him.
Yeah.
But also it's sexual, because she's got her tongue out.
Yeah.
Again, as you said, her sexual claws are in him. He's being controlled by her/his own lusts.
Yes. So, as in the comic, after the circus guy is killed, that's when they have to go on the run. So they
buries him in the yard.
He buries him. Yeah. They go to a cabin out in the woods. So he's essentially the social worker at the office had mentioned that the guy that was trying to kill Jenifer seemed like he was homeless, but he had actually been well-to-do shortly earlier.
Yes.
And now, as soon as we get to the cabin, he's looking pretty homeless at this stage.
Yep.
Things are looking rough. This is a shack, essentially.
Yeah. And he's got a big crate of vodka and nothing else.
Yeah. But he gets a job at like a grocery store, stocking shelves and stuff.
Yeah, so this is odd. This is, I guess, Act 3. And this is kind of like the hope spot.
Yeah.
We have this lady.
Yeah.
She's taken a shine to him.
Yeah.
Like, he's clearly on the lam. Something's gone wrong. He even says that. I really need a job.
Yeah.
I've had a rough trot.
And she says to her son, when her son's like, "What's with that guy?" She's like, he's trying
he's
to fix
not a bum.
himself up.
He needs help.
He's trying to
we can help him.
Yeah.
It lays it on a little thick, because they have a few conversations where she says it's going to get better. You know, I'm doing. You know, I want to help you.
And he cleans up, like he shaves and stuff, and he looks good again. He looks like Steven Weber again.
Except he's going back to that cabin and he's fucking that monster every night.
Yes.
So it's not much of a hope spot. Then anyway, so Jenifer has come out and seen him at the grocery store.
Yeah. Now this is a bit of a. We've got a bit of divergence from the comic here, because in the comic he picks up the newspaper to look for a job and sees that a child's been killed.
Yes.
Here he gets a job, and Jenifer comes out and spies and sees this attractive woman speaking to Frank.
Yes.
They're not doing anything.
It's implied this is kind of like jealousy.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say this is a really key thing here for me. So the son, I think his name is Jack, goes out to the woods for this party, a keg party, out in the woods. His girlfriend is off with some other guy, and his friends are teasing him for this, like, why don't you go separate them? She's your girl. What are you doing?
It's either his girl or it's his crush.
Or his crush. Either way,
doesn't matter,
there's some sort of sexual frustration going on there.
Yeah.
He walks through the woods, and he leaves a party to go take a leak, and he sees Jenifer from behind, and she's like giggling.
Yeah.
So
Which she doesn't do at any other point.
No. So she's capable of this. And I also want to point, so spoiler, she catches Jack and kills him and eats him. But the point I want to make is she doesn't go after the woman who runs the store. She goes after the woman's son. This is so, and she giggles. This is deliberate, planned. This is like a substitute for a lot of that stuff that was in the comic where you get hints that she's doing this on purpose, like the alcohol. Yeah. We don't have the alcohol here. Instead, she's going after the son. She's making noises she was able to make but didn't make before. Maybe on purpose, was hiding her level of understanding of things.
Yes. She's some kind of predator.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's implied, because she goes to the grocery store and watches him interacting, so but Jack is not her next target, because she just straight up kills him.
Yeah.
What does she get out of these partners? I mean...
well, she's hungry. It's literally
they protect
physical.
her, right?
It's physical. Yeah, the partners, yes, but she has physical hunger for meat because at one point when they're in the cabin, Frank brings back this giant sausage, and
she salivates.
That's the thing that makes her salivate. Nothing else that he offered to her.
So she eats things.
She needs meat.
She needs fresh meat apparently, because she just kills.
Yeah.
But she does eat other stuff.
Yeah.
But she's compelled to kill.
Yeah.
And then I suppose she uses her mojo, as it were, to insert herself in the nest. Yeah. Like a cuckoo. So she uses her sexual mojo to insert herself in a household by sexually manipulating a weak, lustful man.
Yeah. So she takes so Frank comes back to the cabin and she is eating Jack.
She's eating him alive.
Eating him alive.
She's managed to tie him up.
By the way, very graphic scene was cut out of this of her eating his penis.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. Yeah. I'm not sad that was cut.
It doesn't really make sense the way it looks, because it looks like a fully erect penis. And I'm like, well, wouldn't he have gone flaccid by the time?
Well, it's like you said earlier. I mean, the body...
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway,
that
it's a
bit
good
got cut, but she is absolutely eating out his crotch is just a mess of gore, and he's still alive.
Ugh.
This is, it's really full on. So anyway, Frank's had enough. He ties her up, takes her out to the woods. He's got an axe or a cleaver.
It's an axe this time.
It is an axe this time.
So presumably that he's found in this farmhouse.
He ties her up, ties her down, and then a hunter shows up. Now, in the comic, these are exactly paralleled.
Yes, except in the comic he waits hours for someone to come.
Yes. But, well, we don't know how long that other guy might have waited hours.
I doubt it. But go on.
I think he did. I think that guy waited hours to hear the footsteps of Jim coming through the woods. In the comic, I think when Jim found her, I think that guy that was killing her...
In the comic, he waits hours, because it says in the caption.
No, in the end. But I'm thinking about the first kill in the comic.
Oh, yeah.
I think that guy had been waiting.
Of course he did, because it's part of...
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, I think that's great in a 10-page comic. In a TV show, to have it be exactly the same would be weird. So I think it actually makes sense to have the cop shooting the first time and have a different method of this happening.
Yeah.
But this one plays out almost the same as the comic, because it is a hunter.
Yep.
He shows up, he tells him to stop, he doesn't stop, he shoots.
He tells him to stop and then shoots him. He doesn't even give him a chance.
Frank's about to die, and he says, Jenifer!
Same.
Yeah, and you were going to say something here.
No. Just that it feels less like the cycle. So
Yes, that's right.
In the comic, it's a cycle.
Yeah, and definitely there's no scratch this time, which I thought came from her. So it's less of a cycle, but it's a bit of a cycle.
It feels a bit. Yeah,
it's going to happen again.
It's still a cycle.
This guy's life is going to go to hell.
It feels less like
because he sees her face.
You're right, and we know that the bloke that she latched onto in an earlier scene, the original bloke was a well-to-do bloke. Yeah. He had like a Rolex.
Yeah.
His clothes were nice until he didn't wash them for 3 weeks in a row or 5 weeks in a row or whatever. So it's something that she's done before and can do again. But we've seen in the TV show that she has more than one way to manipulate people because she's capable of that giggling.
Yes.
So she can seduce.
Yeah.
Whereas in the comic, it feels very self-contained.
Yes.
For whatever, it might be her life cycle, or it's very cyclical.
Yes. But the fact of him not waiting in the TV show means there's not necessarily going to be a cycle. He could kill her. What if some guy didn't wander up?
Yeah. It feels more coincidental.
Yeah. To happen twice.
But she has options. So in this case, she'll use the damsel in distress play. She has options because she can giggle and seduce.
Yes. Yeah.
So history's going to repeat itself.
Yeah.
But it's less an iron destiny.
Yeah.
It's a mysterious, I think, supernatural kind of thing going on in the comic. In the show, it's more like, by hook or by crook, Jenifer will attach herself to a man and seduce him and use him until it's time for the next one.
Yeah. So that's it. Then we roll credits, basically.
Yes, you have been watching Jenifer.
You have been watching.
Are they all? I'm not sure if they're all. If every episode of Masters of Horror does that.
Yeah.
But it was a little strange.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any trivia?
A little. I don't have any, because this is a TV show, we don't have any information specifically on how much it cost to make or how much money it made. Because
Well, we do know that Masters of Horror got cancelled after 2 seasons.
Yes.
And then Mick Garris kind of resurrected it under a different name at a different
Nightmare Theatre or Nightmare something or other. Yes. So, a word about Mick Garris. If you look at his filmography, he, as you say, it's not particularly illustrious. I think he directed Critters 2.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually.
Well, yes, it is.
It's a really good one.
And
I know him because he always shows up on horror documentaries talking about horror.
Yes. He directed Critters 2. He directed the Stand miniseries, which was a very kind of like, that was a big deal at the time. Apparently still the most watched miniseries, even more so than Roots.
Wow, okay.
As you said, he also directed the Shining miniseries.
Yep.
Because Stephen King famously doesn't like Stanley Kubrick's Shining.
Yeah.
It's fucking baffling.
Yeah, really.
So you look at it doesn't seem overwhelming, but actually, as you pointed out, he's enormously respected in the horror community. An extremely well-loved kind of he's done everything. He's written, he's done novels, he's done screenplays, he's directed, he's produced. Everybody really loves and respects him. He's the kind of person that you can only understand kind of if you look at what's going on behind the scenes. He knows everybody. He connects people with people. He's very, very influential. And apparently, no one has a bad word to say about him.
Right.
He's allegedly the nicest man. So well liked is he that he, in the early 20th century, so around about 2002, he could just have a dinner and then invite enormous numbers of horror directors to a dinner. Now, this is fact. The Wikipedia page states this without a citation. So I dug.
Okay.
And this is a fact because it's been repeated in interviews and in his biography and in places ad nauseum. So here's what the Wikipedia page says. It heavily implies that the series Masters of Horror came about because of this dinner party that he held in about 2002, where he invited 10 horror directors, including a lot of those names that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
You know, like Toby Bannon, John Landis,
Joe Dante.
Joe Dante, yes, he was there. John Carpenter,
yes.
I really love this story because it feels like it's similar to the story of how Frankenstein got written, right? You know, the famous contest?
Yes.
At Lake Geneva during the Year Without Summer, where like Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and Mary Shelley were all there and they had this contest and Frankenstein is the famous outcome. So I really like that. So, yeah, this is true. This dinner would happened, and apparently this is where the name Masters of Horror comes from. Because according to his biography, which was quoted in an interview that I read, it was on a website called Movie Hall, the interview with Master of Horror, Mick Garris. At this very first dinner, a table next to the table where they were dining was celebrating a birthday, and they all joined in, as you often do when you're at a restaurant where someone's singing Happy Birthday. They joined in singing Happy Birthday. And at the end, Guillermo del Toro, who was there, stood up and intoned, "The Masters of Horror wish you a happy birthday."
Wow.
And that's where the title comes from.
Huh. That is fascinating.
Yeah. So it was at Cafe Bisou in Sherman Oaks in California. So as you said, so John Landis, John Carpenter, Guillermo del Toro were there. So
Don Cascarelli?
Yes, Don Cascarelli, Stuart Gordon, Larry Cohen, and Toby Hooper. Sorry. And also an actor called Bob Burns. And Mick Garris is quoted in a 2005 article as saying that the series eventuated from these dinners, little social gatherings that I used to hold that turned into, wouldn't it be great to work together? I wanted for years to do a horror anthology, but do it in a way where each filmmaker could tell a story of his choice the way he wanted to tell it. Amazingly, it worked out that way. Each one is completely, and I mean completely different. And it's so interesting that you said that Argento read the comic and chose the story that he most identified with, because that lines up with what Garris is saying.
Yep.
So as I said, this story reminds me a little of C.L. Moore's Shambleau. So that's a callback, of course, to Jean-Claude Foray, who illustrated Shambleau.
Yep.
So did Leiji Matsumoto.
Yeah, that's right.
As watchers of our Facebook page will know. That, of course, is a fantastic early science fiction story with a Medusa-like creature that seduces the rugged Captain Harlock-like hero.
Yeah.
It also reminded me a bit of the Philip K. Dick short story The Golden Man.
I don't know that one.
In that, the Golden Man is an essentially mindless mutant who has two powers. The first is that he has perfect precognition.
Okay.
The second is that he has incredible animal magnetism, and he can use either to escape from any situation.
Okay.
It was Dick's kind of subversion of the early insistence in science fiction that mutants should always be the next stage of humanity. This is pushed by, who's that guy that the early publisher, Amazing Stories?
Oh.
Jesus. There's an award named after him.
Yes.
Campbell.
Campbell.
Apparently he was a big believer in, there's a next stage of human evolution coming, and maybe I'm it.
Yeah.
And maybe science fiction fans are it. Dick didn't like that, so his way of contesting that was to write this story where the next stage of human evolution was essentially mindless.
Right. All
it had was a perfect precognitive ability that had expanded to take over its whole brain, and it had no reasoning capability. Anyway, this reminded me a little of that because Jenifer, especially Jenifer in the comics, she has some kind of power, right?
Yeah.
And yet she never speaks.
Yeah.
She might not have free will. She just does what she needs to do to survive. I liked it.
Yeah.
Anyway, those were my thoughts.
Okay. So let's do our ratings.
Yes.
I think so. Comic
1,000 times yay.
Yeah, really one of the all-time greats.
It's just so good.
Yeah. This TV episode.
Right.
So
You go first.
Coming in, I really liked. And then I heard about the 2 cutscenes, and I went online to try to find them, and I found 2 or 3 reviews of the episode, and one of them was like, holy cow, this is the best episode of the show, forget all the others.
Right.
And one was like, this is the worst thing, most infantile, stupid, not infantile, juvenile thing.
Yeah. Yes. Juvenile.
I can't believe how dumb it is. And all these horror directors are washed up. This whole series is terrible.
Okay.
And then I was like, was I wrong in my judgment of liking this? I thought it was pretty effective. I thought Jenifer was scary. I thought it was gross. I thought all those things about it. I don't know if you'd be able to play it as the compassion angle because the eyes, they couldn't get the eyes to reflect in that way.
Right. No, and there's a deliberate effort to make her power more. It's less about compassion.
Yeah.
I don't think he's compassionate. There's hints that he might be going that way early on when he wants to rescue her from the asylum. But I think an equally compelling argument, and one that's borne out in the rest of the episode, is that he has some kind of need to possess.
Yeah.
Because of her beauty. Yet she's so ugly as well.
Yeah.
I think. For me, it's also a yay. If you're coming down in favour.
I think I'm going to go yay.
I think you definitely feel dread watching it.
Yeah.
It's creepy. It's unsettling. In a different way from the comic, but the juxtaposition of the hideousness of her, like the makeup, and not just the makeup, but the way it plays it so subtly in the first 20 minutes or so where you don't really see everything. What does she look like? And yet we see, this is a beautiful woman, the actress that played Jenifer. And Argento's not shy about filming her body. You see her whole body, essentially. It's an unsettling series of images.
Yeah.
And I felt dread. And
yeah.
As I was watching it, and I think it effectively conveys the kind of visceral reaction that you have to watching good horror. So for me, it's yeah.
Yeah. Okay, how about adaptation? So I want to say in the first minute, I was like, wait, he's a cop, and they're not crediting Bernie Wrightson. I'm like, this is bad. Doesn't look like the right scene. Nothing was right. And then it kind of grew on me. And I'd say I like that. There's some strange parallels, like the scene where the wife tries to get him into bed versus the scene in the comic where the wife's in bed with him telling him to get rid of her.
Sure.
There's kind of having her try to get him into bed in the show is a great contrast to Jenifer coming into his bed later on. There are these parallels that keep happening and stuff. I thought it was really... And having killing Amy is kind of a... I don't know. For me, it worked somehow. It was adding up. Could it have been different? I would have liked to have seen some of that crazy Suspiria color.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have even worked more in its favor.
I agree. It does feel a bit insipid at times because it has to... I mean, for all that Gareth says that he wants the filmmakers to tell the story the way they want to tell it, I feel like someone's reining Argento in. I haven't watched anything of his aside from his Giallo work. So everyone says his stuff after 1980 is crap.
Yeah.
Except for this.
Right.
Everyone says this is the only thing you watch.
Right. Okay.
But it feels I don't know, it kind of feels like, the stuff that I really associate with him isn't present.
Yeah.
Someone's toning him down for television.
Yeah, well, he definitely says in the interview when he screened the episode with his producer, the producer's like, we got to cut those two scenes.
Well, then it's a fact. Someone is reining him in.
Yeah. So, but I do think it's a yay for me for adaptation.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I love it when things change.
Yes.
I like it when things are transformed. And that's definitely occurring here because Jenifer's. This is much more erotic than the comic. Mm-hmm. This is erotic horror.
Yeah.
This TV show.
Well, I would say the comic was pushing it.
Certainly, but also it's really creepy.
Yes.
Like, it's incestuous, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
But this is much more skirting that line between eroticism and horror, which, if done effectively, can be really unsettling. Yet, the comic is so perfect.
Yeah, that's true.
That I feel
that is true. You're not going to reach that level.
So I like it when things are improved by the transformation. So even though I definitely like the episode.
Yeah.
I like it, but I feel like in the change from the comic to the show, something's lost.
Yeah.
I really like. Now I have, as we've pointed out, I have a different reading to the comic from you. I think Jenifer's malign presence she's the villain of the piece for me. She has some kind of preternatural power that's going on.
Yeah.
And I really love, I feel like when reading it, we're seeing the life cycle of whatever she is, even though she hasn't technically reproduced. Yeah. We're seeing
her feeding cycle.
Yeah. Or her perfect. And I feel like in the jump to the episode, even though the episode is good, and even though the themes are great, the themes of poison, infection, weakness to your baser instincts, and sexual predation are all great, I still feel they're not as great as the comic, and something has been lost.
Yeah.
So for me...
much of it for me is that scratch.
Right.
Because having the scratch implies for the whole episode that he is infected with some supernatural thing or virus. Right. But at the end, when she doesn't scratch that guy, you're like, oh, it was an emotional attachment, sexual attachment.
For me, I feel like it's something. I feel like Weber put it in because he wants people to think Frank is infected with lust.
Yeah.
And he can't fight it off for whatever reasons, his own personal weakness or what have you. It gets worse and more infected as time goes on.
Yeah.
As he's being infected by his desire for Jenifer, or the power that Jenifer has over him.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a nay, but only a slight kind of like
borderline nay.
Borderline nay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So please like, subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever your platform is. Please join us on Facebook. Please join us on Instagram.
Oh yes, we're active on Instagram.
More Instagram content coming, a little bit per week, as much as I can do. Please join our Patreon. It's patreon.com/comicbookmovieoblivion, all one word. We do need the cash for books and
you could have learned so much more about Mick Garris if I'd been able to get a copy of his biography.
Yeah.
You could have learned more about Jenifer too, because this is the thing for which he is best known.
Yeah.
So it's not just the Creep Show. That's why Critters 2 and...
Yeah.
I mean, everyone talks about Masters of Horror.
Yeah.
And I listened to an episode or two of his podcast, Postmortem, and... in it, other people have appeared on it and said that Masters of Horror is kind of like one of those shows that led to the revival of anthology storytelling.
Right. Okay.
That we're currently in something of a golden age because of streaming platforms. And people point, despite it being cancelled in the second season, people point to it and say, we're going to make something like that.
Yeah. Well, guess what we're doing next week? We are doing Episode 4 of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, which is on Netflix. The episode is called The Outside. It is based on a webcomic by E.M. Carroll, which you can find on their website. It's called Some Other Animals Meet.
Oh my goodness. We're violating all sorts of conventions here.
Yeah.
We've never done a webcomic before.
No, we have not done a webcomic.
And it'll be our second ever TV show.
Well, we'll talk a lot about E.M. Carroll and their webcomics when we get to next week. Also, this episode was directed by Anna Lily Amirpour, who's a very interesting director. Young, new, I think she's only done like 3 movies, but that first one was really great, and we'll mention some of these things as we get around to them. I have not seen this. I haven't seen a single episode of the show, much like Master of Horror, but I've read a lot of E.M. Carroll's comics, so we will talk about all that next week.